I'm in some deep 2019 shit right now.
Whoa. Tell me about it.
So back in 2019, I made a tool, I think I talked about last week, that made it easier to build themes for Podient.
Yeah.
And it was quite cool and stuff.
I see where this is going.
Here I am again, doing that. Doing it in a different language for reasons that are boring. But this week I've been having fun learning a whole new language that I've resisted for years. Well, it's not a language, it's a framework. And I'm like, why there? Where have you been all my life?
What's the difference between a language and a framework?
A language is the actual characters that you would type in order to do a thing.
Sure.
One line follows the other. Whereas a framework is written in that language, and it gives you lots and lots of building blocks. So people often say like batteries included, which means it has a set of, a framework has a set of structures, and then batteries included might be that it includes all the code to help you write your own login system, for example.
Interesting. So it's like pre-made blocks of that language. Nice.
Yeah, but all built in the same material. Yeah, I started learning this thing a couple of days ago, and I'm like, this particular language is called JavaScript. There are lots and lots and lots of frameworks that do what I need to do, which is just basically I have things that happen on the server, and I need the JavaScript to be the thing that happens in the browser that makes you actually be able to see stuff. And there's a ton of different frameworks, and there's like a handful of really big ones, and I've sort of resisted a few of them for ages. And one of them I was going to use is really, really, really old, and it's just like, it's really big and bulky. And anytime you do anything with this kind of development, you have to use a thing called Node. And every time you use a thing called Node, it just makes everything just like stuff just doesn't make sense. And you run a thing, and it's like that thing is poorly documented, doesn't run. It's all free and open source, so you can't really complain, which is fair enough.
Sure, yeah.
And there's always just like, oh, why did that thing do that? Now that doesn't make sense. And I've got 3 different levels of error, and I don't know which one's which. And I started using this thing, and it's just like, oh, easy breezy. Like, can I do this? Oh, yeah, I can do this. And then it's stuff that, I don't know how this like resonates, but like, it's pretty cool to be able to, in code, have 2 pieces connected to each other without you having to write the connecting bit. Because usually you have to write the connecting bit to say, when this thing changes over here, tell this other, like the old meme of, these 2 friends are not speaking. I want you, Jane, tell Simon that I'm not speaking to him, right? You have to do all of that yourself. You have to do that negotiation. This thing, it's just like, if you just say, you just like draw this connection between the 2 things, and then anything that changes on either side is just bloop, done automatically, and it updates the page, and it's just like, it's so seamless. And anyone who's ever, it's called a thing called Vue, and anyone who's ever used Vue will be like, yeah, Mark, we were there in 2017, my dude, but I finally got there. And it's just what I've made already in the last couple of days is so cool. It's just, oh God, it's just that feeling. It's just like, oh my God, I've missed that feeling. I'm just walking around like yesterday with my chest out like I was a cockerel, just like, I'm doing a thing. And it's one of those frameworks that makes it, possible for you to feel that way, rather than like, oh my God, I'm just pushing lines of code to make this thing work. So I feel like I've achieved a lot in the last couple of days, and so it's really,
amazing.
really, really cool. So yeah, I'm back doing 2019 things, and I've got all of the themes that I built for Podient.
Oh, cool!
Back in the day, so I've got to translate them from one template language into another, and then hopefully once the thing launches, I mean, some of them do look a little bit outdated, but at least they're there, and it gives me some variety. As part of this, what I'm calling the onboarding process is I want you to be able to visit the website, type your podcast name in, and then after a few seconds, basically it gives you a screenshot of what your website would look like.
Oh, neat.
So it's pulling the information, pulling the actual information from the feed, using the website builder code that I wrote last week to then generate the homepage. take a screenshot of the homepage, and then send that back to the browser in real time. So
that's cool. I assume a screenshot so that it's not the live code, so that it could be like copied and pasted from like view source.
No, it's not even that. It's just because it's much more computationally intensive because like if you make the page interactive, people are going to click it.
Yeah,
people are going to want to, and so you have to generate every single page after that.
Right.
Right at the beginning or when they've clicked it. And I just thought, you know what, for now. And so what I'm thinking of doing is for all the different themes that I'm going to load into the system, it will generate a screenshot of each theme and cycle through them when you're in the onboarding process, so you can just get an idea of like what they might look like in different settings.
Nice. Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So it should be quite nice because I have to make it enticing because I'm being a bit restrictive because there's things I'm doing to like reduce the amount of spam accounts and stuff I get. Because one of the things, so there's I said I wouldn't go on about this, but what can I say? I'm excited and you're the only person I get to speak to. So you get the brunt of it.
Spike me, daddy.
You know, my sort of big competitor, it's just weird. So like I've just come into this market and I've decided, but the incumbent.
The incumbent. That's the word for it.
Yeah, it actually is.
My intended disruption is
my opponent in this race. What he won't tell you,
unbeknownst to them.
What I found weird about that. And I'm not shit talking. I've got no ill will to bear them at all. Like, because that's not why I'm doing it. But I always found it weird that you could pick any podcast and make a website for it. So you could make a website for someone else's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And someone might say, and like, there's no protection against that. And someone might say, well, why should there be? Like, you're only going to make a podcast for you're only going to make a website for your own podcast.
Sure.
Don't think so, because for one thing, we know that you don't see it often now, but I haven't heard of it in a couple of years. But Anchor, now Spotify for podcasts, were where pirates went when they wanted to pirate someone else's show, load ads onto it, and then claim it as theirs.
Yeah.
So people will do stuff. You know, if there's a podcast that doesn't have a website, or it doesn't have a great website, or whatever, or someone wants to come along and go, well, I can SEO the shit out of this and I can get further up the rankings and I can put ads on it. Of course they'll do that. Mm-hmm. You and I both know from doing the customer service stuff that we did with Podium is you throw something against the internet and you throw some people against that.
Yeah.
People are weird and people will do weird things and they will ask weird questions. And you're just like, where did your brain go with that? So I'm like, no, you have to own, this has to be your podcast. You can't, you can't just go making websites for people. So because I'm...
But it's not for people, it's for them.
Yeah. And so because I'm being restrictive and like you have to click a thing and it sends you an email and it's the email that's associated with the podcast and all that stuff, because there's a hoop to jump through and you can't just go doop-a-doop-a-doo and start creating a website. That's why I want to do the screenshots, because otherwise people are going to be like, well, what? I don't have to get an email and have to go to my host because my host hides my email address. Oh, God, I'll forget it. Whereas if they can see some screenshots of what their website might look like, my hope is that they're like, oh, okay, I want this. So
very nice. Very nice. I like that a lot. Got the security built into it, live previews and stuff. Man, that's going along. That's really cool.
Good. Yeah. It's so interesting for me. This is the most grown up, for want of a better phrase, development project I've embarked on, because all the pieces are using like pretty close to the best practice of the industry, in that you have these separate things. You have an app that just back end stuff that just does an API. It doesn't have an interface. Then you build the interface separately, and then there's a landing page which is also separate. And it's so all these pieces are built sort of that way, and they talk to each other, and everything's got tests written against it, so you can be reasonably sure the code works and all that kind of stuff. And when I started Podium, and even when I was doing Narrow, it was just like, nah, just build it. Whereas for some reason now I'm really into like yeah, this is going to be high quality.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm not suggesting that I'm pivoting or anything, but were I to pivot a few days ago, the thought, the sort of description of, oh God, what was it? It was something along the lines of building technology to help creative people win.
Ooh.
Has been something that I've given a massive shit about for about as long as I've been on the internet.
Yeah.
It's no great revelation, really. It's just like one of the first websites I built that was a proper ass website, went out to the world and had a .com and everything, was a community for creative people.
Yeah.
And then, obviously Podient and various other things like that, and Narrow as well. Like, it's all about, and it's an interesting thing to ponder, having a little portfolio of things that are all sort of little tools and stuff to help creative people like close the gap between where they are and where they want to be. So that feels quite nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you're feeling your 7 year ago mojo.
Yeah.
3,026 years from now, life will be either really good or really bad. It's
okay.
50-50.
I mean, that's definitely true. Oh, shit, dude. That's a very good line. Oh, my God. Wow. I like that. I like that a lot. So speaking of 50-50, do you want to talk about addiction or do you want to talk about America? Which one first?
Well, I'm a bit addicted to talking about addiction. So let's go towards the pain and talk about America.
Okay.
Listener, you'll get that joke later.
Yeah. Maintain, abstain, and turn towards pain. It wasn't turn, but it was something along those lines, wasn't it?
Yeah.
See, when things rhyme, they stick.
So you figured out the American dream? Is that what I hear?
Yeah, it seems an inordinate amount of my intellectual curiosity is coming from Dimension 20 at the moment.
Wonderful. I love it.
And I'm on the full season 2, because I've already watched the mini season that they did. So I'm now on season 2, The Unsleeping City. Brendan Lee Mulligan is just, oh my God, the man's a phenom. Anyway.
Amazing.
He's got the second season is a love letter to New York, which is his home state and home city, from what I understand. So there's a lot there around sort of Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty. There's a big battle. I'm right at the end of it now. There's a big battle happening in Times Square, and it's with part of it is the idea of the American dream. And it was just as the characters were talking, and I sort of, I think I got not necessarily the dream, but I feel like America thinks of itself as a thing in a way that other countries don't. I think France probably does. Like, France has that identity of, I mean, for God's sake, they call themselves the France. Whereas, and lots of countries have got identities and stuff, but like America feels like it's got a mythos,
Yeah.
And I've kind of always rubbed up against it of like, why do you think you're so special?
Well, we had to, because we were the new kids on the block. We had to make a name for ourselves, and then we just kept that idea. and then as the very few generations have gone by, we pass down that that need to be special to the next, and it becomes even more ingrained. And I don't know. That's my theory.
So my moment of kind of clarity, at least in terms of my vision and why I found it interesting, is it's an immigrant story.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a country that was founded, which Britain was found and sort of invaded. It wasn't founded. It wasn't started. No one started Britain. It was just fucking always there.
Yeah.
The Vikings and wherever else. But someone hit start on America. I'm going to trample unwittingly and unmeaningly over the First Nations people, and I don't mean to. I'm not erasing that history. It's just, I can't reconcile both things at the same time because my brain isn't good enough for that. So I'm just going to talk about the people who came, in the boats.
Yeah.
So yes, they came in boats from the UK, but they came in boats from lots of places, from Italy and Poland and France and Ireland and Spain and Sweden and lots of that. And then further on as the years went on, Korea and China and they all poured in. And I know they didn't all pour into Ellis Island, but that as an idea, bring me your tired masses yearning to be free. That and the idea that the not just the dream in terms of wouldn't that be nice, but the like goal, the really sort of guiding thing is like the idea is yes, you can. It's yes, you can. Like it actually is. You can make something of yourself now. Capitalism,
Don't get me started.
lots of other things have polluted that and made it very difficult. But the ideal is there, and. Because I always thought it was interesting that American kids like the whole pledge allegiance to the flag thing, and almost not exactly, but born into this idea of American exceptionalism and like how dare you? Yeah. But when you look at it when I started looking at it from this idea, I was like, actually, that is fucking cool. It's a solid idea of a country that if you come here, you've got a shot. And again, I'm not saying that is true, but I'm saying that's the idea, and that's a cool idea. Yeah. And it felt like when I realized that is why Americans think they're special, because there is a special idea in there. I found myself kind of a bit more warm towards that notion, because it felt like, okay, all right, you young buck, you got you wide-eyed dreamer. That was the moment of going, I think I get a version of it, and a version that sits well with me of come here and have a shot against everyone else, an equal shot. There's an egalitarian idea. It's a very romantic notion, but one that I think is worth clinging to as an ideal. So
yeah, I agree. I wish it was still what we fought for, what we lived for as a nation. So far from that right now. Man, I just watched this. I swear this is related. I just watched a Veritasium video about election systems, and because America, I don't know if it's famously here, we have a first past the post voting system where the person who gets the most votes wins. It doesn't matter on one run through. If there's,
I guess I didn't realize you were first past the post.
Oh, well then, unfamously, we have a first past the post system, and it's so dumb. It's so bad. It fundamentally pushes people to not vote for somebody who they think is going to lose, whether that's who they actually want or not. And so then those extra candidates don't even run, and it funnels down to a two-party system, creates such division because those two parties are usually very different, and it instills tribalism and a bunch of other things, and it's created with capitalism our current situation, which is just dire. It's awful.
Don't blame me. I voted for Kodos.
Who's that? Who's Kodos?
Sorry, it's a Simpsons joke.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes
Kodos
sense.
and Kang are the two great big aliens in massive test tubes, and one day they come down and they invade Earth, and they decide they're going to run for president, and they both run, and so one of them, is like, I think Homer's out there and he's booing them, and one of them is like, it's a two-party system, what are you going to do? Vote for the other guy, and so they end up all being enslaved, and so. Homer just says, "Don't blame me," as he's being whipped. I voted for the other guy.
Well, it's just the dismantling of the American dream of like how, like that I still hold on to that too, of like we welcomed the immigrant, and that is
not just you idea. Welcomed the immigrants built, like the immigrants came.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's they also have a co-creation. It wasn't just the Brits. Yes, the Brits did a lot of it, but like lots of people came and made a thing. How does a
Co-creation.
bastard orphan son of a whore and a Scotsman dropped in the forgotten spot in the Caribbean, etc., etc., etc.
At first, I thought that was a walk into a bar joke.
Yeah. How does a Scotch? Yeah. Yes, opening line of Hamilton famously had the line, "Immigrants, they get the job done."
They get the job done.
What does that make you feel? All of that kind of stuff.
It's like pride and heartbreak. Like, I want it to still be that way. I want open borders. I want peace and harmony and love and kumbaya. That's what it makes
You're
me think
saying
about.
you don't want, what is it? You don't want migrants, as he calls them. I don't know why he doesn't call them immigrants, but he calls them migrants, which doesn't mean the same thing. But he wants them to fight each other for money?
I don't even watch. I have no idea.
I get it secondhand from clips of comedians ragging on him.
Yeah.
So, I don't go seeking them out, but like they appear, and it's it was quite the thing.
I was texting with my father-in-law yesterday about election systems because I sent him that video, and he's just like, I just like, because we're a few states, and including Oregon, are starting to vote in using ranked choice voting for our voting systems.
Right.
And there's like a bunch of fear around it because Americans don't look at any other country. And it's just,
see that, and that's the shit that like does wind me up. Yeah, it's just like the idea that other countries.
It's not only that we're superior; it's hilarious. That we're the only country.
Yeah, it's like other countries. Oh, that's cute. Anyway, like I know you don't think that, but like I do sometimes listen to Americans speak, and it's like you do just think that other countries are like this novelty, this frippery, and it's like no, there's like vast other countries that are bigger than you, and do lots of other things. But it's like,
I mean, even me, I'm aware that other countries exist, and have tried things. But like, you'll still call me out sometimes, like, "Oh, you sound like such an American." And it's like,
oh no, that's usually just because you say things that I only hear in like American like films or things that just feel like it's not. When I say that, it's never like in that kind of sense. It's like you're talking about high schools and drive-throughs and things like that. Just like we don't have those words here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sophomore and homecoming queens and valedictorians and what the fuck are you on about? It's probably stuff that came from us, but then we like a lot of stuff. Like here's one: you call soccer like football soccer.
Oh my
that's
God.
More correct because that game is called association football, and so Brits would, in their British way, shorten that to soccer. Because that's what we do. And so it is a British term. And so we should get off our high horses about people calling football soccer.
Holy shit. You blew my mind. I had no idea about I had no idea where soccer came from. Like what that
it's association football. That's why you've got so many teams in soccer that are like something AC. Because they are or FA because they're football associations. And so the game is association football. So yeah.
But then why we go and call American football is just oh my God.
When you
it's don't use your feet,
protection.
It's dumb. It's so dumb. Because we're the only country.
We're the one. Yeah, we're the main one. I love main country energy. That's something I do enjoy. And I wonder about because like every country must have that. But some maybe have a bit bigger claim to it than others.
Yeah, I feel like when I see other countries like have pride in their country, it feels different. And maybe it's an inside thing, like me, because I'm so aware of the faults of my country. When I see people have pride in the country, in my country, I immediately go to all the fault. I think about all the things that we're doing wrong, and not just wrong, but like horrible. And
I reckon that's universal.
Yeah. Maybe.
I reckon that is universal. I don't think that's just you, and I don't think that's an American thing either. Yeah, when anyone. Yeah, the idea of being proud of, like, there's a comedian who's become a little bit problematic now, but it's a guy called Russell Howard, and he had a thing about, like, being proud of where you come from is weird because you had no choice in it.
I know.
It's like, mother, point your vagina to Dover. It's like, it's not, it's dumb. It's dumb
really
to
dumb.
have that kind of pride. It's like, you had nothing to do with it. But at the same time, I don't know.
I'm so proud to be an earthling.
Because I'm in such a Dungeons and Dragons world at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Very, 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 very quick side jag. In order to make this thing that I'm building for the new app, I need to have lots of sample content so that the person building a theme has lots of text and images and stuff so that they know what a real podcast would look like so that they can write their stuff against it. And so I'm getting ChatGPT to make a fake D&D podcast and then give me all of the information. And it did some artwork, and it's like because I hadn't realized this, but in the ChatGPT interface now you can just say, can I have an image please, and it will make you an image. Nice. And it's really good. And I was like, leave some space for text, and it did that because I was like, you're not good at text, you don't know how to put text in images, so I'll do that bit, but just give me a nice and like it's now got memory. And so I'm just having this continual conversation with like, okay, episode 1 is like, I've got it to map out 30 episodes so that I can put all of this into the system so that when you come to design a theme, you've got a whole podcast website there that you can then, the sample data's there and it actually looks like a real show rather than like lorem ipsum everywhere. So yeah, it's quite fun. Back to D&D, it all maps back. I've been listening to this audiobook of on like book 4 of Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is very fun and in this weird new genre that I hadn't been aware of, which is called something like game lit or lit fiction or something. Speaking of being proud to be of Earth, the premise is that Earth has been invaded by this huge intergalactic, very complicated syndicate. They're called the Syndicate, and they're made up of different systems and all that, all sorts of things. Our hero is a little bit of a jarhead, but like he's heart's in the right place kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And he's on a mission now to make sure that the people who have subjugated his planet pay. And it's like, Earth. It's so weird to be like, I know this thing's written by an Earth person because right now that's the only stuff we get. But I'm still like, go Earth. Like I've got that like little hint of like Earth jingoism. Like, you show those aliens that you completely made up in your story.
Yeah.
Fiction's the best. It's
pride. It's
fun being back in sort of playful kind of territories and getting into it. I'm loving it. I'm having fun.
That's awesome.
So that's the American dream.
I came to the realization that I have a fetish for epiphanies.
Oh my God. What a collection of words, my dude. Woof. Lay those beautiful words on me again. Go on.
I came to the realization that I have a fetish for epiphanies.
Just soaking in it. And also same, I think. Tell me about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. That's just the... It's just a thing. That's
all right. Well,
a thing I noticed.
You've had an Epiphone. When I was in America for the first time on my own was 2015. I went to Dragon Con in Atlanta, and I had lots of fun being the British guy who was there, and then just kept dicking with the people I was in, just like mispronouncing words, or pronouncing them in ways that we don't pronounce them, just to like, is that how you say? No, it isn't. I'm just winding you up. Klimbing. That was the one I remember. Is reading the word klimbing. Is that how you all say climbing? No, it isn't.
No.
Anyway,
but it's fun to wind you up.
Yes, exactly. Pulling your leg, mate. I'm pulling your leg. Oh. Just talk about addiction.
Yeah. Well, in our episode "Spike Me Down," you previously mentioned, we had discussed. We discussed my take that we're all like addicted to foods and social media and other things, and it was contrasting with your take that we have agency. It's not necessarily addiction.
Yes, but also, and I kind of knew it at the time, but wasn't ready to accept it. because I think I was. So there's a concept of being above the line and below the line, and I, in terms of like how sort of able you are to look at your situation a bit more objectively, and like I was below the line at that point and wasn't able to sort of look at myself and go, yeah, just like everyone else.
I mean, yeah, like I kind of came at it, I think a little bit harder than I intended to,
Sure.
like using you as an example. I was just like, I was thinking like, here's something that could be relatable, and then I think as I went into it and as you heard it, it was a bit more like, well, no, I don't.
What do you mean? It's a nice day today. What are you saying? What are you saying about other days?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you fucking calling defensive, you prick?
It got me, and we kind of touched on it briefly, and I think even still now I'll put a pin in it, but like it did touch on the free will debate.
Yeah,
and like it has that's so interesting to me about that. Like it feels like not only feels like we have free will, but like we do, but then also do we? And so I don't know. It's crazy. But I really listened to it, and a bit that you said stuck out to me, showing I feel like where I wasn't really clear in my argument, and at the time I definitely didn't feel like I was saying it in a clear and concise way, and this isn't quoting you, but what I heard you say is that not to label it addiction, because addiction is harsh and has a negative societal implications. And it felt like you were kind of like, okay, yeah, there's something here, but let's not call it addiction.
Yeah, spoken as someone who could quit anytime he wants.
Right.
I think that's what that was. Potentially.
Yeah.
I'm not addicted, you're addicted.
Yeah. And it also like, it felt like you were like, yeah, there's something here, but let's not stigmatize it by saying it's addiction. And my intention, and I think I got to there eventually.
I think you did.
But yeah, my intention was like, no, let's destigmatize the word addiction, because that, and you know, obviously that is like a super uphill battle. Like that, changing the stigmatization that everybody in the country and society feels, well, that's an uphill battle. But normalizing addiction, like it's there. It's something that the companies that hire the PhDs to add timers and gems and bullshit to games, or make processed food as soft and easy to eat as possible, or the social media companies that try to extract our attention and keep a hold of it for as long as possible, or the news companies that keep us wanting to watch to see what kind of trauma is going on in our local area so that we'll still see the advertisements. Like, they all know that we're so easily manipulated into addiction. And my point of view is like, let's all wake up to it.
Yes.
And of course that's what I want us to wake up.
Yeah. Okay. I'm interested now in, and I was going to make the argument, which I think may be a bit naive, of
great, hit me.
Yes, people are doing those things intentionally, but are they doing it to create an addiction? And I'm like, of course they are. Yeah, because because they want you to be addicted to their thing. They want it to be glued to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, that's an interesting thing. Is I think that is a difference.
Like the game designers learned from casinos. It was completely intentional.
Yeah. That is interesting. So I have read one of the preeminent books on how you make products addictive from a software or kind of service, like gamifying and that kind of stuff, rather than like obviously chemicals. And it's kind of couched in this, there's a few things I think in this sphere that are like, make sure here's a really dangerous weapon. Make sure you only use it for good now. But wink, wink. We don't know what it's. It's the ExpressVPN who are selling their VPN service exclusively to people so that they can get Netflix in another country so that they can watch stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we gave you this service. We're not telling you what to do with it, but you could do this anyway.
Yeah.
So I've definitely, read stuff and thought about implementing certain things, but I think that word is really interesting and really charged in different circumstances. And I think what I like is that you are not drawing lines that many of us are drawing about what we can class or classify as addictive versus what we wouldn't. People wouldn't necessarily, I think, classify the news. This is less problematic in the UK than it is in the US, I know. Or, Jesus, my Simpsons game,
Yeah.
They might call it addictive, but almost in that, like... And this is what I wonder whether... I've noticed this in... Sorry, I know I keep saying American and I'm not ragging. It's just it's a distinction. I've noticed in American English the use of the word addicting as an adjective. To say this is addicting, which is, okay, ignore the fact that grammatically bullshit, but that may be a distinction people are hoping to draw because they don't want to call something addictive, but they want to, people will describe games as being...
hedging it a little bit.
It's super addicting, and it's like, it's because you don't want to call it addictive.
And it's a good way.
Yeah, but we've decided that's healthy. Yeah. Or at least not damaging, and I'm cribbing off notes that you sent me or that I got last night from that wonderful talk about the addicted brain and dopamine and
and that's the thing. It's like, the way I don't, like I'll classify news or social media or processed food or games as addictive. Them themselves don't have to be. It's never the substance. It's always the dopamine. That's what we're addicted to. And like as you were probably about to describe, as this author of Dopamine Nation gave this talk to Stanford about when something pleasurable happens, we get a spike in dopamine, and then we get an equal drop. It goes down lower than our baseline. And then it comes up. And then for a normal circumstance, a normal healthy person, you'd come back up to a neutral baseline. But when you keep hitting that button so you can get that spike of dopamine, then the baseline starts to reduce. And then your normal baseline is lower of dopamine. And so you feel worse, just kind of always. And so you more and more want to hit the dopamine button to get back up to where you feel like you should be. That's something that that whole concept, that whole structure, I resonate with so much in terms of my chronic illness, how I got there, how I got through it. The fight to reverse it was the exact path that she describes on how to combat addiction at the end of that talk, which were those three rhyming words that you mentioned: abstain,
maintain, abstain, and seek out pain. I think that was the phrase.
Yeah, and seek out pain. And then seek out pain is
that's really interesting.
That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
And
we should explain maybe why seek out pain.
Yeah. Within the brain, the brain always wants to be in a homeostasis.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. And
when we get a pleasure, and she used the imagery of a teeter-totter, it's like a balance, like balancing scales.
A seesaw, as we call it here.
A seesaw, yeah. And so you sit on one side and you go down, and it's fun, and it's all the pleasures, and then your brain will push down the other side to equal it out, and so it pushes you back up, and so you're up, and it's scary, and you're not in the good spot anymore, and then eventually it will even back out again, assuming that you don't try to get more pleasure. And then eventually, if you keep hitting that dopamine button, you'll be the pain side will be pressed down all the time, and you'll be lifted up, and you can't really control it anymore. And the way out of that, to seek balance, is to walk towards the pain, because then your brain will try to equalize out the opposite way by giving you pleasure automatically.
And one of the examples she gives, I think, is endorphins while exercising.
Yeah, exercising, meditation, cold plunges, things that are difficult, things that are hard to do, things that are uncomfortable. And that's, man, comfort is something that has been on my mind so much over the past couple of years.
It's on my mind at the moment as well. As you were describing that, I was realizing how much I've engineered so much of my life to live in comfort and avoid pain. So much of what I do is all about avoiding pain, and I kind of love the idea of deliberately seeking it out and actually just like going for a cold plunge. That's easy. You know what I mean? Like for me, it's not for everyone, but for me, it's like, that'll hurt, but I can do that in a way that's other things are just like they feel a lot harder.
Yeah,
is interesting.
Super. Yeah, I've been really into cold plunges lately. I've been loving. I mean, having the sauna at home and then being able to go in a cold shower is one thing, but like, anyway, it's invigorating, and it's nice that like that's also included in the seeking pain of things.
I can definitely think back to 2018, and I did as I was watching that video and I've described it possibly in that episode, and possibly before, actually probably a few episodes before, of being in a cycle of food, booze, vape, food, booze, vape, food, booze, vape, food, booze, vape, and within a night, basically just trying to keep that dopamine button pushed down.
Just put a weight on it.
Yeah. Constantly with the finger on the scales, and I realized that I was doing it, and I'm thankful that I did. I'm grateful that I did. Like big old crash. And I can't remember if it was 4 weeks or if it was longer, but I do remember being pretty damn depressed for a wee while there, and coming home, working on Podium and sitting in front of the TV, watching an episode of Parks and Rec, watching enough with my little TV dinner because I decided that I had to lose weight, and so I was just eating these shitty microwavable meals because I was just like calorie deficit, and just waiting for it to be 9 o'clock, which was the earliest time I decided I could go to bed and then watch TV in bed and then fall asleep, and just sort of waiting for the day to be over. Like I said, I don't know how long it lasted, but I remember coming out of it and that feeling, and it was a great day when I, really sort of popped my head out. And that tends to be how it is for me anyway. It's like there is less, maybe there's a bit of a bottoming out, but then at some point it's like my head sort of pops out of it and I go, oh, here's the and I sort of start to feel good again. But definitely know that. And I think it's an interesting, and it would be really fun to experiment with this as a hack of like finding something that is painful, that is not, damaging, like the cold plunge thing, bit of a shock to the system, but something that is kind of, unpleasant, but I don't know, masochistic side of me kind of, quote, for want of a better phrase, warms to it.
A tool you can use to pull yourself out of a rut.
Yeah, possibly. It also got me thinking about, because one of the things she mentions in the talk is prayer. And I was also thinking about, with the cold plunge, like the idea of punishment as something that is in certain, like Abrahamic religions, things that are a little bit more on the austere side do seem to have earthly punishment, not just, the idea of hell, but like earthly punishment as a thing. And I wonder again whether that is echoes of a society or a group of people, again, just trying to make sense of this thing that we have in our brains, and this need to balance out. And they did it because they thought it was morals, They thought it was
Right.
moralistic that if you have hedonism, then
Yeah.
you must have, the opposite.
Yeah.
Whereas, it's like, the same effect, but it's not because of morals. It's because of brain chemistry, but that hadn't been invented yet. In the same way that, we prayed to the sun to make it rise. And it's like, then we realized that it didn't give a damn whether we prayed to it or not. It rose and it fell.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed, a correlation I made, was like I had a wake up call in 2013 to change my lifestyle habits. I was drinking around, on average, 4 energy drinks a day, which are 2 servings each can, and like I was having so much sugar and so much caffeine, and it was just and other things that I was using to keep myself pushed and going, because my body, like if I wasn't having those, I'd be dead. I mean, I'd be like dead tired, dead exhausted, like just not able to function. And I had a wake up call, and then I started to try and do things. I started to try and change things so that I could get healthier, not exactly knowing where to go yet, but I knew that sugar was the enemy. So I started doing a whole bunch of sugar-free things and cut out sugar, and tried all these alternate sugars that are on the market now because profitable, capitalism, ka-ching. And it was even until very recently, it was in 2020, where I was bringing home this sugar-free ice cream that was like there's like erythritol ones and alternate sugar ice creams, and I was like gaining weight, and I was getting so puffy, and it was like things were getting worse, and I was like, but I'm doing what they said. I wasn't, but I'm like, feeling like I am. And what I realized upon looking back on it, besides the fact that it still wasn't healthy for me, is that I was still massively trying to pound that dopamine button. I was still massively in my addiction to needing relief from the pain that was causing myself by needing the relief from the pain I was causing myself by needing the relief. I mean, for me, the rock bottom came. I don't know how to describe what the particular rock bottom was, but for me, it's always been like a series of micro rock bottoms. It's like, oh, that helped me learn this lesson, and I finally changed for that thing. But like, there's no one rock bottom, isn't for me. Like you hear about like an alcoholic, and they have like this really bad spell, and then they get into AA and progress on, and then their life changes and stuff, and that's great. Yeah, for me, it was a bunch of micro rock bottoms, and one of them for me was watching Margaret find the Bean Protocol and actually try to stick to it, and observing somebody walking towards the pain, trying something uncomfortable, giving up all sweets, focusing on eating beans. Like, what? That's what?
That's not what a person does.
So, yeah. And then hearing the healing stories about how it's worked for other people, and unique especially, and this and that. And then on top of that, hearing the science about how it works and why it works. And it was like, oh, okay. All right. I can see why I need to give this a try. And then I did. I tried. I walked towards the pain. I gave up all the things that, I gave up a bunch of the food things that I was pushing the dopamine button for. And, it worked in ways. And the timelines that the author mentioned in that video I sent you, I feel like were really accurate in terms of how it felt for me. 2 weeks was kind of a magical moment, although I still, as she describes, the brain is still not activating the same way to stimulus as a healthy brain, there was a difference. There was a relief at that point where things were not as hard. The first 2 weeks were just such a struggle to get over, to really get yourself to start doing something different, because you're so used to how you had all the comforts that you had before. But then when a month hits, it really calms down even more, and then 3 months is like wonderfully creating a new habit. And it's also the mitosis of the endocrine system. So in terms of physical health, by taking beans, having healthy fats, like there's a bunch of good effects from that. But yeah, and then it didn't stick. And then I felt like, oh yeah, that worked. Now I'm healthier, and now I can kind of, go back to comforts. Like I did the thing
because I can use them responsibly because I've fixed
oh my god, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, I've learned the lesson that I can't use it responsibly. Not that I won't ever be able to use it responsibly, but I have demonstrated that my slope is very slippery. So, yeah. Anyways, I'm back on the beans. I've been doing daily beans. So I've been doing. Not that I was ever not eating beans. I have been eating beans every day since I started the Bean Protocol, but I haven't been doing like the bean snacks that we had just talked about in a previous episode. And my routine now is when I wake up, I start eating beans every 20 minutes until I am hungry enough for lunch. So I'm not actually doing a real proper intermittent fast at the moment. I'm trying to get as much fiber in me as possible. And then once I hit lunch, I'll make a pretty big lunch that is very fat heavy, lots of healthy, happy fats. And then maybe I'll have dinner, maybe I won't. And that will be my, maybe intermittent fasting, maybe not. I do want to lose weight so bad. And I think maybe after 3 months of doing this, I might try a prolonged fast again to help me get into a fat burning state, and I can shrink down another size. But I'm not so sure about that. But I feel like, so I was maintaining intermittent fasting for the past, let's say 6 months, as I was exploring adding things that are off protocol back into my diet. And I found a kind of equilibrium, like, oh yeah, I can have a little bit of sugar, I can have a little bit of caffeine. And as long as I keep eating windows small, I'm not ballooning up and gaining a whole bunch of weight. Like that was my control mechanism. And in some ways that felt healthy, and in some ways that felt like kind of an abuse of myself. It was both restrictive and indulgent at the same time. And having both of those doesn't mean they equal out. This is all really painful to admit.
Okay.
I gotta say, because I know Margaret's going to hear this, and she's going to be like, yep. and in the most in her head, she won't be saying it out loud. I just know she'll be thinking it. Bless her heart, she's an angel, and she's right. And sometimes I don't want to admit that she's right. Sometimes you just got to do the right thing. Because I want intermittent fasting to be this, like, I want there to be an easy key. I want there to be a comfortable, solution.
Yeah.
But there isn't one. You have to walk towards the pain. Yeah. And for me, Bean Protocol is the pain that works.
Yeah.
You
a few weeks ago talked about refuge recovery and being amongst a group of people and talking about your addiction as offset by other people's. And I'm drawing a correlation to a friend of mine who has OCD, and he described, one of his, the only tick that I ever actually knew to associate with him was sniffing. Several times an hour, well, multiple times a minute, he would, sniff, and it would get to the point where you would get the sort of hollow kind of noise that you get when there's just like, it's just so dry in there. And I never asked him about it. But I think he mentioned it at one point in a Slack message as he described it as his OCD's flavor of the month, which I got straight away. I was like, okay, there is something that you are compelled to do, and that can probably change over time. I'm kind of equating the two things, really, in that an addiction support group, like the idea, like you said, you put it so well, that we are addicted to dopamine, not necessarily or at all to the substances. Yes, withdrawal can create lots of other uncomfortable side effects for more potent drugs, but it's the dopamine that is the thing that we are drawn to, and so that's different from a chemical addiction, I guess. The idea of like, what is your addiction's flavor of the month is to other people irrelevant. It's your business. It's sort of not their business, because we're all on the same line. We're all on the same path. We're all, it's just how we got there is different. And some people perhaps, we talk about addictive personalities, and I wonder about that. Like,
yeah, me too.
There have to be, and certainly with ADHD, there is more. My understanding is, I don't know what I'm understanding, but I think there is a relationship with dopamine and ADHD. That's as far as I'm I would go there. A healthy amount of entrepreneurs tend to have ADHD, which makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, I wonder what the connection, what connecting line there is between ADHD and dopamine. Because it is interesting too to me that so Karen Hurd, who created the protocol, the Bean Protocol, has a bunch of different courses on her website about how to use the Bean Protocol to reverse hair loss, reverse fibromyalgia, reverse PCOS, and also to reverse ADHD. And spoiler alert, there's different causes and reasons why the protocol works, and there's different science for each section, but it's all the same. It's all the same diet. The protocol is pretty universally the same. Little tweaks here and there depending on what you might need extra nuts, or you might need more bean snacks, or this, whatever. But as I'm thinking about it now, like, this protocol is partially a dopamine resetting protocol, where I've been so focused on thinking about it as a high fiber, endocrine system resetting protocol. Interesting stuff to think about.
There is some stuff about the reward cycle.
Interesting.
Which there are certain things that are more rewarding to certain brains. And, for me, the work I've been doing over the last couple of days, and it's interesting to look at this, because a couple of years ago, I don't know why, but I got it into my head that it was bad for me. Doing something that I'm good at was bad for me, because I had pathologized the feedback, the reward cycle, the seeking reward cycle, and told myself that I was just doing it for that reason. And there are negative things in some of the ways that I've used my coding skill, for an example. And as I've talked about before, like with Podium, whenever I was faced with something that I didn't know what to do, I tried to build or code my way out of the problem. I feel like I don't know how to market my business, so I will build a new feature that will do the marketing for me. And it's like, no, never did. Einstein, whole thing of definition of insanity being doing the same thing and expecting different results, never worked. People might, play with the feature, and then it just became a new feature, and the people who were existing customers liked it. Like,
and then it just became table stakes.
Yeah. And very quickly, oh God, one of the bugbears that I'm going to have to readjust to is announcing that you've just done something, you've spent weeks working on it, and then someone just goes, "Be cool if it did this." Like, mother, like, I just gave you this whole thing, and straight away you're going, "Oh, it doesn't do that though."
I feel guilty.
No.
Not just with you, but with other people, that Marco and the rest. It's like, oh yeah, that's so cool that you worked on that. Man, there's one little tweak I'd make to it that'd make it perfect.
It wouldn't exist. You wouldn't even have a thing to comment on if I hadn't spent weeks on it. Anyway,
yep.
But like, yeah. So, I mixed up some of the negative aspects of the way that I worked within Podium, and kind of mislabeled them and said that they were fundamentally sort of, irresponsible ways to run a business or whatever. And it's like, yeah, okay, from a business perspective, it's not the wisest thing, but I was doing the only thing I knew how to do, because again, I've engineered my life to live in as little discomfort as possible. I was on a podcast last week about failure, and I talked about Podium. And you remember when Todd
Cochran?
Yes, thank you. Todd Cochran's been making a podcast about podcasting for years, and he's not a smart man. That's not nice to say. He fucking is.
I remember. Remember him.
He's the dummy. Anyway, that aside, that's different from what I was going to say. He just is dumb. His outlet put out a thing about Podium, and they talked about it on the New Media show. I never actually listened to it because I might have done a little bit, and I was just, oh God, it felt horrible, because here I was, this new guy, this kid, this 3 toddlers in a trench coat masquerading as an adult, thinking he can make a podcast hosting service. How the hell does, and there was just this whole sense of having made a mess on the internet. All of that to say, I am aware of the work that I'm doing right now, and being very mindful of the shitty little admin jobs that I'm not doing, and the more important jobs that I'm not doing as well. The prior commitments that I'm not necessarily fulfilling, because the dopamine reward is here in this project right now. So that's, for me, the link. I am very much going towards the dopamine, and that feeling of achievement, and having solved the problem, coded something into existence, which is not a feeling that I get in the same potency in other areas, because it's stuff I do every day. So yeah, it's really interesting to walk this line of like, I am really good at this, and it's satisfying, but it's not what pays the bills, and I have to be aware that it's not always the thing I should be doing. But I do it because it feels so good. Like, it feels good in the moment, except for when you're bashing your head against a problem and you just can't seem to solve it. But then once you do, it's just like whoosh, just this, whole feeling. And then maybe you find that you can't sleep 2 days in a row. Maybe that's related.
That reminds me of when I was first entering or hearing about like the wellness space, and getting the advice from naturopaths, from practitioners, like from, social media accounts, where the advice of just listen to your body.
Oh yeah, you had a great take on that.
Yeah, I just felt like, well, my body's been lying to me. Like, my body,
not intentionally, just it doesn't know.
It doesn't know.
It's doing its best, but it's like, it's so clouded.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, I have sugar and it feels good. So why wouldn't I go to the sugar? I do these things that I am addicted to. I do these dopamine responses.
We do other things that make us feel good. Yes.
Yeah. And so no, yeah, and it wasn't until after taking intentional time away, abstaining for a long period of time, and then finding the actual truth centers in my body and finding like, oh, now, yeah, I can eat this vegetable and I can feel the nuances of it. I can feel its nutrients. I can feel what good feels like, not just what, rapid pleasure feels like. Going towards the more difficult thing is the big struggle of our time, I kind of feel like.
Yes.
One thing that was mentioned in that video was like our current society of abundance and plenty, and like we have so many options of how we can push that dopamine button. Like, oh, I'm sure I don't have any candy in the house right now, but I could flip on my phone and go to YouTube, go to social media, go to a news site, whatever, or I could walk down the street and find some drugs, or I could drive my car really fast. I could, so many different ways to seek pleasure. And yeah, man,
and I think
it's hard to pick no. It's not only hard to pick which one, but hard to pick no at all. Like no is an option.
Where I want to, the bit that I want to push on there is like not necessarily push back, but just kind of make the observation that we don't want to avoid pleasure because we deserve pleasure.
Absolutely.
And that's why I asked you a couple of weeks ago about Stoicism, which was possibly a mischaracterization of what Stoicism is. We deserve pleasure, but I think what we have to be wary of is blindly walking into or blindly treading on that dopamine button and not realizing that we're doing it. And that's the thing. It's like having pleasure is one thing, seeking pleasure because you're addicted to that feeling of dopamine. Yeah, that's the tricky thing. It's like going out, having a drink with your friends, going on holiday, having a massage, like what, if that's your bag, whatever it is, those kinds of pleasures, like absolutely we should seek them out, but they're not the things that are the problem.
Yeah.
We're not addicted to holidays.
Yeah. Moderation over hedonism.
But then when anyone brings up moderation, I always have to bring up the Tom Merritt line, moderation in everything, including moderation.
Yeah.
Which I just think is such a wise little thing to tack on to the end.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so easy to take that too far as well.
Absolutely.
Moderation, was it? Yeah, moderation in everything, including moderation. Yeah.
I was in my men's group yesterday, and we were talking about, or I had mentioned my camping trip and my mushroom trips. And one of the things that I learned from that is like that everything is okay. Like everything is a part of this life. You're supposed to experience any of it. There's no shame in wanting to try and do thing and having it fail and having a hard time and having a great time. There's no shame in any of it. But also you get to experience shame. So shame it up if you want. There's no shame in shaming, like it's all good. Everything is fine. Being addicted is fine. That's a life experience. Go for it. Addict the hell out of it.
So I'm going to be away next week because I'm going to be in a field in Hastings with my business hippies.
Yay!
Yes.
And hit that pleasure button.
Well,
no, I'm just joking. But no, you've been talking about like just sitting in the sauna and going for a dip
and doing a cold plunge.
You've been, yeah, exactly. No, you've actually been talking about the opposite. I love it.
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking forward to the Saturday because that's when. So there's one of the things that's become a bit of a tradition is there is a shit quiz that happens on the Saturday, and it's chaotic, and it's like a pub quiz, and 2 people ran it last year. I experienced every emotion because I went in and I think they were just starting, and so we formed our little team, and it was one of those quizzes where it's like the first round was ridiculous. It was so stupid hard, and then everybody's questioning everybody else's maths, and everybody's questioning the maths of the people doing the quiz, and like I was getting like a little bit frustrated, and then by the end, and maybe aided by a beer or two, it was exactly a theatre performance piece. It was like performance art. It was so funny and surreal. You just realize like you're not in a pub quiz. You're absolutely not. The same people are going to win it every year because they're just really good at it.
Sure.
You've just got to strap in and be along for the ride, because at some point a man is going to put what do you call those? Not A-frame, but the signs, A-boards or whatever they're
A-frame
called.
sign.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's going to have one of those, and he's going to walk up and down the length of the tent saying something like, this doesn't mean anything. Because he's just like, he's written something on a piece of paper on a flip chart, and it's supposed to have meant something to the question, but it doesn't. And so what ends up happening is just this guy walking around the tent going, "This means nothing," and it's just like you've just realized. And the prize is a can of Carling, like lager. And it's the same can of lager that has been the prize for the last 2 years. I can't wait for that, because it's just once my brain locked in and understood what it was, once I snapped to grid, I was like, okay, I get this now. I don't know if they know they're making a performance piece, but that's absolutely how I'm consuming it, and I can't wait for that.
Amazing.
And that's there's seeing friends and there's all that kind of stuff, and I think having done it twice now, I think I feel a lot more comfortable in like, I kind of know how everything works. I think hopefully I was actually thinking about this like yesterday or today, just been like, probably meet a whole bunch of new people, and that's fine. Like, done. I hope I don't annoy people with my snoring too much, and so I might go to the chemist and look for some sort of breathe right strips or something to help with that. Because, one tries to be considerate, Brendan.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that sounds like an excellent week next week. I'm going to be working for a client, a repeat client from the past, and I've been helping her. I just was there, found some mold, and let her know. And so she's been getting that remediated by people who actually do that, and is going to have me come back out and do the repair work. And she just messaged me the other day, letting me know like, hey, it's coming together. Would love you to come back. And she said, so this guy here is doing the demo work, and he's just kind of muttering to himself that it's a shit show. Ooh. And I just wanted to say thank you for never saying out loud that you thought working here was a shit show, even if you thought it. And my response was like, yeah, my pleasure. I've never thought of your place or any of my clients were a shit show. I feel honored to be in your living space, making it better. Like, that's where I'm coming from. And she was like, "Oh, I miss you." and then I just kind of realized like that. This is why I'm the best in Portland.
There you go.
AAA, SMU.
If you know, you know. This has sort of been on my mind as well. The things that we do that are just like, and actually I got that a little bit with this podcast that I was recording on failure. Like people were like, wow, that was really, you really spoke from the heart, or you really did this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I don't have another setting.
I know. Yeah.
And it's interesting that there are some things that people do that we just think like, I didn't even know I was clearing a bar with that. I didn't even know there was a bar to clear, but apparently I've leapt over it without even knowing it was beneath me.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know there's a bar. And that's really, I find that really interesting, because it's like sometimes we don't know the useful stuff that we do, or just the nice things. Like I think I've mentioned before, when clients have, or I've, maybe helped clients find an editor elsewhere or whatever, and they've had problems. It's like, wow, I didn't realize I just thought that was table stakes, as you might say. Yeah, you might think not muttering under your breath about a place being a shit show would be table stakes, but apparently maybe it's not.
Yeah. And I've worked with other contractors that have done the same, kind of had the same attitude. Oh, just polishing another turd.
Jeez.
And it's like, what the fuck? Like, this is your livelihood, for one thing.
Yep.
This is somebody's habitat. Like,
someone loves this place, or someone has loved this place.
Yeah.
Because like I've been at pains, even when I've like talked about stepping away from editing or whatever, like and even the type of shows that I edit, how at pains I've been to like express how, even if I haven't said the specific words, like I think that I'm grateful to do the work that I do.
Yeah, for sure.
And like anyone, you get frustrated with the work, but like at no point, at some points, I've been like, oh, this is shit. And it's because, like, the person, like, hasn't shown enough care. And when that happens, I tend to help them find services elsewhere. Like, just because, like, I want to work with people who, who value it and care. And so that I don't, because, like, I've been in that line enough to work on stuff and go, oh, this sucks. And like, don't, for one thing, like someone really cares about the project that they're making. Someone really cares about that thing. It's really close to them. And just because they said a word wrong or they didn't use the mic right or whatever, it's like, well, it's your responsibility then, or it's your opportunity is the word I'd much prefer.
Right.
Responsibility.
Yeah.
It's your opportunity then to help and say, you know what, actually would be even better is if you did this, if you moved the mic this way, it would sound better. Rather than what I suspect is the case with a lot of places, is just like, nope, that's what you're getting. That's what you provided me. So that's right. If it's shit, then that's your fault. And it's like, well, you could help them make it better. Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like, and I'm sure you feel the same. Is like I am the interface between the person that made this thing and the person that's going to hear this thing.
Yes,
and
you're the goalie.
Like I'm given this product. I'm given this thing in this current status. I'm going to make it as good as possible for the person that's going to hear it.
Yep.
I'm thinking, of course, right now of this new podcast I'm editing, and it feels so good to just do it right, to do it well, and to deliver something great. Am I hitting my dopamine button by trying to do good work?
And is that a problem?
Oh, I do have one more little story about that. So I read Ultra Processed People by Chris Van Tulleken, and he goes in great detail in describing how companies, try out so many different chemical combinations and lab test stuff and market test stuff to find the tastiest, just best flavors, best everything to get you to buy more and more and more. And then I'm back on protocol. I'm not eating processed foods. I'm making my own food. I'm in the kitchen for an hour making a meal, and I make something that is incredibly tasty. I told you this, I made the best meal I've ever had in my life to date.
It's amazing when you hit that button, isn't it? You're like, oh, that's the best one I've ever made. Like,
that's
bam,
the best one ever.
Did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I asked Unique this on a health coaching call. I'm like, is it possible I'm making my food too tasty? Like, is that a problem?
Like such a 2024 Brendan question. I'm enjoying this, right?
I
Okay,
legit.
right. There's something wrong here. must fix this.
I like this too much. This I can't. This I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I like it too much. Yeah, and she was like, "No,
Oh, honey. Oh, honey, no.
no. If you're eating good foods and it tastes good, like fucking go for it. Like, no, that's what we want. That's
Oh.
you don't have to actually suffer through this.
No.
It's not. No.
And that is like you've articulated where what I was seeing between the lines of what you were saying is that's perfectly articulated. I think is just like, oh no, you're allowed to like things. Like, don't throw that baby out with the bathwater. Like, it's okay to like things. You need to like things. Otherwise, there is a thing about like rats when oh god, it's some sort of test where you remove certain things and they basically just die. Like they just because they do nothing and they have no motivation to do anything, not even drink. Everything in moderation, including moderation.
And as always, correct me if I'm wrong.
Textbook.